What's going on, everybody? This is Always Talking Ball. I'm your host, Tyler Noe, and with me, as always, you know him as Lance Barton. Some know him as Lance Freeze. And week 0 is finally here. We're actually going to break down a football game tonight. Make sure you follow us on all social media and all your streaming platforms like YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and make sure to subscribe. We're going to talk Coach of the Year. We're going to talk Player of the Year, Heisman Trophy, Florida State versus Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland. But first, Lance, hit us with some fall camp storylines.
Well, we got to, since football is being played in Dublin this weekend, we got to start with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, which I know that's not what that hat's for. That hat is for the fact that there's tackle football Ireland being played in Dublin this week. Yes, absolutely. So, dude, what's going on with the Irish possibly taking a look at a true freshman at left tackle and a redshirt freshman at left guard for both of their first starts, if that's who they're going to go with, is it Kyle Field with 100-something thousand screaming Aggie fans against Mike Elko's defense and that defensive line? Because that's what we're kind of looking at right now, possibly, as the rumblings coming out of Notre Dame camp. As our resident Notre Dame fan here, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they better be ready to go for some silent counts. Notre Dame fans better be ready to experience a couple false starts. It's going to happen. It's bound to happen with two guys that young on the left side of the line. But they did have, a scrimmage this past weekend. And Marcus Freeman said it was probably the best one he's had in 3 years.
Yeah.
The offense actually kept pace with the defense, which is actually a good sign because, the offense is kind of turning over a lot, like you just mentioned on the offensive line, turning over a lot of the skill positions. The running backs are still going to be solid, but obviously Riley Leonard's coming in at quarterback and the new Mike Denbrock offense. And they keep score, kind of weird in those things. But he said the offense looked really good. He was, the defense is going to be what carries them, especially at the beginning of the season, so the offense kind of finds their stride. But yeah, again, we talked about it, man. Nick Skouerton, Shamar Turner, those guys, they may eat a little bit here in 10 days.
Yeah, and we will be breaking down that matchup a lot more next week, I know, but that was just something that really intrigued me was a lot of people thought that it was going to be some of the older guys that were getting the nod there at left tackle, left guard, but it looks like it's going to be two young guys that are going more with upside instead of experience. So it'll be interesting to see in their first game against that D-line against the Aggies. And you mentioned the offense, how they did in that scrimmage. Apparently Notre Dame does this deal where they call it the jersey scrimmage each fall camp, and I think they do it during spring ball as well, where whoever gets the best of the other bunch, offense or defense, the next scrimmage gets to rock the navy blues, the navy blue jerseys, practice jerseys. And it sounds like since Marcus Freeman has been there, that which is no surprise, that the defense has pretty much owned that navy blue wardrobe, and that this last time that the offense got the best of the defense, which if you're an Irish fan, that's a pretty good sign because, Notre Dame's defense is going to be really good. Next thing I want to touch on is something I think we're going to start seeing more of in college football. And like off air here, me and you have talked about this. Like I've been really, obviously, me being the resident Alabama fan of the podcast, like Courtney Morgan, the general manager, he has a general manager position at Alabama. He's gotten a lot more publicity since he came with Kalen DeBoer from Washington. He was the general manager up in Seattle for the Huskies with Kalen DeBoer, and now he's the GM at Alabama. And he is kind of the mastermind that's been behind this crazy recruiting class that Kalen DeBoer and Alabama's put together so far, currently the number 2 ranked recruiting class in the country. And Courtney Morgan has gotten a lot of publicity from this because he's kind of the mastermind behind it. A lot of people already knew that when he came to Alabama, but now the rest of the country knows it. And not only does the rest of the country know it, the men of Troy, the Southern Cal Trojans and Lincoln Riley knows it, probably because he's taken some of the best players out of California into this Alabama recruiting class. And apparently USC, according to 247 today, USC came calling for Courtney Morgan and was offering around $1 million to lure him away from Bama. And Bama made his salary from $500K to $825K per year for the GM, which I think this is going to be something we're going to start seeing more often. Texas Tech has a GM named James Blanchard. They gave him a lucrative deal because Texas Tech 2 years in a row has two of the highest ranked recruiting classes that the Red Raiders have ever had. You're hearing rumblings that a lot of other of your larger programs are starting to invest into this GM role. And basically with the GM role, it's kind of like the NFL model. They are completely 100% basically in control of the talent acquisition that you see now in college football, handling the transfer portal, handling recruiting out of the high school ranks. And it just depends on the program where the buck stops. Like obviously if, Nick Saban, for example, was still the head coach, the buck would stop with him. But like Courtney Morgan, for example, at Alabama, like he's got a lot of control over this. And it's kind of like he's been able to run with it and hire his own staff under him. The guy at Texas Tech, like I said, has been doing the same thing, James Blanchard, and there's other guys as well. So just interesting that's kind of like you're seeing a lot of college football teams go to that NFL model because, head coaches now are having to fundraise for NIL. They're having to do all kinds of other stuff outside of coaching football and recruiting that they're basically hiring general managers and a staff to do that for them. Then they're, obviously meeting together, et cetera. But just pretty interesting that the numbers of the salaries that are being paid to these cats. We're talking like the same salaries as like offensive and defensive coordinators, if not more, for some of these guys. Because obviously, talent acquisition now with the transfer portal and NIL and everything else is more important than it's ever been.
Yeah, I've got a question for you, and I think you may not have to think about this, or you might, but is Courtney Morgan the most important person in college football?
Ooh. I don't know, but I wouldn't say the most important person in college football, but he's, as far as in Tuscaloosa at Alabama, we'll see, but he might be just as important as the head coach. Time will tell, but he might be just as important as Kalen DeBoer. That's a mouthful, I know. We don't have really enough of a case study yet to be able to say that. But if Kalen DeBoer is as good as an X's and O's coach as what people think he might be and what he has shown up to this point, if the defense can be improved, because like obviously his defenses at Washington weren't great. The numbers weren't great. They did enough. But if the defense can improve and if the talent acquisition can be what it is right now, like again, the number 2 recruiting class in the country, if he can bring in that type of talent and Courtney Morgan is the mastermind behind all of that, he's just as important as Kalen DeBoer is in Tuscaloosa if that's the case. If anybody wants to know how important Courtney Morgan really is in Tuscaloosa, when Kalen DeBoer and his family got off the plane there at Tuscaloosa Regional Airport, Courtney Morgan was with that family on that airplane coming back with athletic director Greg Byrne. When he got off the plane, a lot of people inside of college football said, Courtney Morgan is on that plane with Kalen DeBoer. He's coming to Tuscaloosa. So
yeah, you can bet that a lot of the others, GMs you were talking about, a rising tide lifts all boats. So that 825 will be a drop in the bucket in a couple of years because there's going to be some of these guys making 7 figures easy. And so those GMs all thanked Courtney Morgan. It takes you can get paid. Any guy can, do a good job and get paid. But in order to get others paid, you're doing something right. So 100%. Yeah, time will tell. It was always kind of said that Nick Saban was the most important person in college football for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's a fair question to ask, but let's move on, man. Enough of the preseason talk. Okay. Enough of the storylines.
Football is going to be on our television this week, baby.
Yes. We've got football this week. It's week 0. We got 4 games, I think. There's a couple FCS games. The main one here is Florida State, Georgia Tech. So week 0, again, refresh of the rules. There's some new rules here. We now have 2-minute warnings in college football on the second and the fourth quarter. Thanks to Connor Stallions in Michigan, we have helmet communications. One person on defense, one person on offense will be able to hear the quarterback. Time will tell, and it remains to be seen whether or not teams will move slower, whether or not they'll move faster.
And I just want to I don't know this to be 100%, but I'm pretty positive on this, that I think that helmet communication thing cuts off around the 15-second mark of the play clock.
Yeah, that's what it does in NFL, so I would assume that it's around, the same in college.
Yep.
But yeah, so those are just some of the new rules. Obviously, you can use tablets on the sidelines. You got unlimited coaches on the sidelines now. So who knows how packed those sidelines are going to be with just, all kinds of assistant coaches running around or whatever. But like I mentioned, man, Florida State is taking on Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland, noon Eastern on ESPN. The line is currently set at 10 right now on DraftKings. I've got a lot to say about this game, but I'm going to throw it to you first and kind of get your take on it a little bit. And I've got a pick in this game. It's my first bet of the year, so I'm excited to give it out.
Okay. We'll get to that. We'll definitely get to that. I don't have anything at the moment in this game, but as far as the matchup is concerned, it's interesting, man, because the team with the most returning production in this game is Georgia Tech. Obviously, Florida State did really well. Mike Norvell did really well in the transfer portal. We know that Florida State stockpiles good talent in recruiting classes, etc. So it's probably just next man up at a lot of those positions. But I will say they did not replace some of those receivers and Jared Verse, etc. They did not replace those guys with guys as necessarily like maybe as equal overall talent. Now, Florida State on that defensive line is going to be nasty still. I mean, nasty. Patrick Payton and Marvin Jones Jr. Marvin Jones Jr. transferred in from Georgia. Speaking of fall camp intel, words coming out of fall camp is nobody can block that guy. And Florida State has a very veteran offensive line. Going to be one of the strengths of the team is that offensive line. And they've got two.
Last time we saw Marvin Jones Jr., he was on the opposite sideline of a 63-3 beatdown for Florida State.
Yep. And the Noles have two 300-plus pounders inside of that defensive line, a defensive tackle, Josh Farmer and Darrell Jackson. So, Georgia Tech, what do they like to do? They want to run the rock. Last year, pretty much all of their returning production as far as rushing the football is coming back for Georgia Tech. And Haynes King had 27 touchdowns and 27 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns last year. So 37 total touchdowns. That's a lot of production. Running back Jamal Haynes had over 1,000 yards, averaged about 6 yards a carry. We know Brent Key, head coach for Georgia Tech, his background was he was a Nick Saban assistant forever as an offensive line coach. He was an O-line coach at Georgia Tech, and he got promoted to be the head coach. And he's one of your more, I feel fine saying this, he's one of your more underrated coaches in the country. The job that he did last year at Georgia Tech was incredible with that roster that he had to overhaul and take over. So, I mean, Georgia Tech is going to be better than they were last year. But their schedule is, I believe it is the toughest in the ACC, if I'm not mistaken. If it's not the toughest, it's without a doubt one of the toughest.
I think it's like 8 toughest in the country.
Yeah. So as far as this matchup is concerned, on Florida State offense versus Georgia Tech defense, Florida State is going to run the football. Really good offensive line. They've got multiple backs they can run at you. Obviously, DJU in the power run game. I also don't believe that their receivers, I'm sure they're good athletes. They're fine on the perimeter, but they are not Keon Coleman and some of those receivers that they had last year. They're just not. So I think that Florida State's probably game plan in this will be to run the rock at Georgia Tech, because Georgia Tech was literally one of the worst defenses, and I mean one of the worst, like in the bottom 10 to 15 defenses against the run last year in the entire country. Georgia Tech went out and hired Tyler Santucci as the new defensive coordinator. He was with Mike Elko at Duke. He was with Mike Elko at Texas A&M. So I love the hire there. But still, the roster, I just don't know that it could hold up defensively on the defensive front against Florida State. We'll see. But what Georgia Tech likes to do, run the football, that's going to be Florida State's strength on D, is stopping the run with that defensive line. At least what's what we think it's going to be going into this year. And on Florida State's strength on offense is going to be running the football. And last year, Georgia Tech's weakness was stopping the run. So will that be the case again this year? I don't know. I guess we'll see. But that's kind of like the breakdown of the matchup there. I don't have a side yet. I will say, though, with the line at being I think it opened around 2 touches, around 14. Now it's all the way down to 10. So I'm curious to see what you have here.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, I mean, Jordan Travis is gone. Keon Coleman off to Buffalo in the NFL. Trey Benson off to Arizona in the NFL. They've all moved on. Mike Norvell did his thing. He went to the transfer portal. He found some good replacements. Like you said, I mean, the wide receivers are not like they had last year with Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and those guys. DJU is a downgrade from Jordan Travis. There's no other way to put it. He might be a 5-star recruit, but that's just kind of how his college career is played out, you know. But you mentioned that O-line. 190 starts returning. Love that. Gotta love that, especially when you look at Georgia Tech's defense up front. They lost a lot of depth from a defense that allowed 5.4 yards per carry rushing last year. So that's what Florida State's going to do. They got your boy Roydell Williams coming in. He averaged 5.3 last year with Alabama. Obviously, you know, he kind of saw the writing on the wall with Jim Miller and Justice Haynes. But I think they're going to run the ball a lot more. You're going to see Florida State run the ball a lot more this year. That's going to set up the play action for Florida State, which DJU excels at. That's what he is. He can take medium to deep shots, and he can hit some of those guys. I mean, you're not going to know a lot of the wide receivers for Florida State right now, but you'll know them by mid-year.
Yeah, DJ's much better at the play action pass game. No doubt about it. He's much better when you have a run game that he can kind of lean on. And so, yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, and, you know, they've got the old law firm of Haynes & Haynes on the Georgia Tech side, Jamal Haynes and Haynes King, you know. But Florida State's got dudes to stop that. Like you mentioned, Patrick Payton, Darrell Jackson, Marvin Jones Jr. I don't think Haynes King is going to find a lot of success throwing the ball. You got Fentrell Cypress in the secondary still. I've seen some Georgia Tech people out there, you know, spouting off cherry-picked stats that, you know, Haynes King stat line last year could only be matched by Jaden Daniels. And if you just cherry-pick the stats and talk about interceptions and yards and rushing yards and all that, you're like, okay, sure. But he also committed 18 turnover-worthy plays and had 16 interceptions last year.
Yep.
Okay, so it didn't actually take care of the ball. The game is in Ireland. I think Florida State fans are going to travel better than Georgia Tech. I think that the line is moving because it's week 0. The public wants an upset. They want an upset bad. They want to start off the season right.
Georgia Tech is literally the dog with fleas of week 0. They're the public underdog.
And this year, I'm not falling for it. I didn't fall for it last year in week 0. Notre Dame was favored by 20.5, and I took the Irish in the only game I took them last year. And you took them as well, and they won 42-3. This week, my official pick, my only pick for week 0, got it at DraftKings as of Wednesday night, already bet it. Florida State -10. Actually, I didn't get it at DraftKings. I got it at Fanatics. So if you're in a state that has Fanatics, they have -10 at -110. So I'm taking the Seminoles. I just think people, you know, because it's a conference game and it's the first game of the season and you don't know what Florida State's going to look like, I think that I think they're going to come out. I think they're going to control the trenches, and they're going to fluster Haynes King, get a couple turnovers, and I think Florida State -10, solid bet.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with that. By the way, if I had to lean one way as of right now, I would lean that way. If it was up at the 2 touchdown mark, I might think a little differently. But this is a perfect opportunity here, where again, where odds makers thought this line was when the game was first scheduled and when they put out a first line was 2 touches, and then now it's been bet all the way down to 10. It could be wrong here, but I think this could be a situation where you might see come Saturday around kickoff, that line's going to be back up there closer to like 13, may move a couple more points. So if you were on Florida State or want to be on Florida State, you need to take this like now, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because there's not really a ton of difference between, if you can get it at 9.5 or 10, there's not a ton of difference in taking it at 9 or something. Like, there's no reason to sit around and wait for that.
Yeah.
A little nugget here that I thought was interesting, that it's kind of flying under the radar, I guess, because Mike Norvell is such a G of an offensive coach and play caller, et cetera. But offensive coordinator for Florida State, Alex Atkins, is reportedly suspended for this game. And he is their offensive line coach. And it has something to do with dating back to, of course, good old NCAA, dating back to when they were the Georgia offensive tackle, Amarius Mims. Apparently there was some tampering involved or something, whatever. Like, that doesn't go on in college football. So I believe, based off what I've seen and read, that, yeah, he is suspended for this game. But I don't think Noles fans, give a shit about that, because they've got Mike Norvell calling plays and as their offensive coach. So, yeah, that was just a little nugget that I thought of there that I thought we should definitely mention for the folks that are listening. And Another I'm just curious on this. You hit something there that I agree with, that it's week 1, it's week 0. There's not really any other marquee games at all. And we know how people love an underdog. Like, I think that really is a situation here where it's kind of becoming like the cute thing, like, oh yeah, let's ride the Jackets and the Georgia Tech, Brent Key. They're a likable team, likable dog, etc. We've also talked about them in this offseason that they're going to be a better football team this year. But again, their schedule. So yeah, I don't disagree with that pick, man. Stay tuned if I end up having them later in the week. Check the socials. I may throw them out as well with you. But good stuff, man. What else we got?
Man, I think we got a couple other games. I mean, SMU, they're playing at Nevada, so they're kind of still keeping some of those G5 games that they had on schedule previously of joining the ACC. Normally, you wouldn't see an ACC team going to Nevada and playing.
Dude, that's another one. That line opened at like 20 and a half, 21, and now it's all the way up to 24 and a half, 25, depending on which shop that you're looking at. Dude, that's a lot of points on the road, 24 and a half, 25. But hey, it's a lot of points for a reason.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't know much about Nevada, really. I know I'm excited to watch Preston Stone.
Yep.
Probably get to see a little bit of Kevin Jennings as well.
Yep.
I'm excited to see the Rhett Lashley offense. I mean, we'll know a little bit about SMU. I mean, if they come out and they take care of business, okay, you look like a real ACC team. If they come out because it's a road game at Nevada, week 0, you struggle a little bit. Okay, how are you going to be able to hold up in the ACC, especially that week 5 game against Florida State, that week 3 game against TCU, all that stuff.
Hey, I got a little something for you. You know who the head coach is at Nevada, don't you? Mm-hmm. You know me and my coaching. You know me and my affection for old coaches here. Jeff Choate, the defensive coordinator, the co-defensive coordinator at Texas last year, and the guy that was kind of helped be responsible for building Montana State and the FCS into a really good little squad. And we're going to get to them here in a second.
Speaking of Montana State,
we're going to get to them here in a second. But Jeff Choate, he was the co-defensive coordinator under Sark at Texas last year. He got the head gig there at Nevada. So something to look at in this game. If you're just looking at something, take a look at the total. That total keeps ticking up. SMU was solid defensively last year, and they've got some dudes back on defense this year. Going to be really solid again on D. This could be a situation where you're just hoping and praying that SMU doesn't go over the total themselves, because I think Nevada's going to have a really tough time scoring in this game against SMU. I think SMU will be able to score about as much as they want. That's the thing, though. How much will they want to score? This could be like a 42-6, 38-7 type game. Blowout, never in question. The Ponies go up and down the field, but they go under that total. It's like at 50. It's like in the high 50s last I saw. So that's just something to keep an eye on there. But we were talking about Montana State. Montana State is an FCS squad. I think they're ranked number 4 in the country in the FCS. They are playing old Bronco Mendenhall and the Lobos.
What in the world is up with this line?
Yeah, dude. I actually asked my dad, who's been in sports handicapping for a while, if he's ever seen a line like this, and he said,
"I've never seen it."
Yeah, he said, "I got to be honest, I don't know that it's rare that you see something like this." So, Montana State going to New Mex, playing the Lobos. It's the first game as a head coach for Bronco Mendenhall at New Mex. Montana State opened as a 4.5-point favorite. It is now all the way up to Montana State, an FCS team, minus 11.5 on the road at New Mex. So, I've read some notes on this. I think it's like the second highest line ever of an FCS team over an FBS team. So if this is interesting. You couldn't pay me to bet on this game, but hey, if you're a degenerate out there and you want some action at Montana State, New Mex, Bronco Mendenhall is a really good football coach. Always has been.
There's got to be something roster-wise going on at New Mex.
Yeah, well, it is. They're trash.
They had to have been just absolutely gutted, or suspensions or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they're really bad. That's what it is. They're really bad. But Montana State, apparently, again, just looking at some nuggets on this game, their running back, who's really good, is going to be missing this game. They've got another starter on offense that's really good. Apparently, it's going to be missing this game. But still, that line is ticking up that high. So for odds makers to make this line this high and to put their necks out like this in this game, it just makes me not want to touch it at all. But if you made me take a look at anything, if you made me, I mean, 4.5 and 11.5, that's chasing a lot of points. You couldn't make me take Montana State as a double-digit favorite on the road. I would have to take a shot at just praying that Bronco Mendenhall is going to have that street trash of a roster, at least ready to play some football and hold Montana State under that 11.5 line. So, but that's pretty much all I've got on week 0.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's all we've got right now. I mean, it's just a little tease, a little wet in the appetite.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening to the episode so far. Please don't forget to head over to homefieldapparel.com. They still have plenty of platinum team boxes available, which a lot of you guys have already purchased. I've gotten some pictures and text messages that the gear is just awesome. They're going to get you ready for the start of college football season, and we can get you 15% off of whatever you purchase on the entire site. Just type in ATB15 in the promo code section during checkout, and you're all set. Once again, that's homefieldapparel.com, promo code ATB15 for 15% off. Now, back to the episode. So, enough for talk on the field. We're going to get back off the field, and we are going to talk everybody's favorite award, the Heisman Trophy Award. I mean, the Davey O'Brien Award. I mean, the Heisman Trophy Award. Whatever it is. It's a quarterback award, right? We're not going to talk favorites. We're going to talk long shots. Non-quarterbacks that might have a realistic chance. I wouldn't advise betting on any of this stuff. It's super fun. If you want to bet, you're bet on a quarterback. That's what it is. It's what it's turned into. You got guys like, Devontae Smith and Derrick Henry and, just one-offs that win the Heisman Trophy. But, your traditional favorites are Dylan Gabriel and Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers and Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, all those guys. We're going to get to, I've got 3 guys here that I would take a peek at if I had just kind of FU money here and throw some money at the wall. Last year, if you watched our Heisman episode, I gave out a certain LSU quarterback, right? No, not that one, not Jaden Daniels. I gave out Garrett Nussmeier in the event that Jaden Daniels were to get hurt. I think Garrett Nussmeier is worth a look again. Right now, he is currently, where's he at? He's at
plus 2,000.
See him on there? Plus 2,000. Okay, yeah.
Plus
okay.
2,000.
So 20-1, so it's not a bad, but long shot wise, I mean, I would take a look at the best wide receiver in the country, Luther Burden, Missouri, right? 150-1 right now. He's got a quarterback that he's familiar with. He's got an offense that slings the rock. He's got running backs, Marcus Carroll, who's going to take pressure off Brady Cook. They're going to be an offensive-minded team. They have an easy schedule. So if he puts up, video game-like numbers, Luther Burden could be worth a look. G5-wise, if you ever get a G5 Heisman Trophy winner, A, they're going to have to be undefeated for sure. That's A. B, they were going to have to put up Lamar Jackson type numbers when he won it at 9-3 Louisville. I really think the only guy capable of doing that is my boy from my alma mater, Caden Salter.
He's going to put up some stupid numbers.
I know, and he's 200-1. Like, you could throw $5 at it, but the problem is because their schedule is so weak, I don't know if he's going to be playing all 4 quarters of every game. That's, if they want to keep him in, if Jamie Chadwell wants to keep him in and risk injury and say, you know what, let's go for the Heisman, let's go for some records, he could do that. Jamie Chadwell is a smart coach, though. He's not going to do that. But Caden Salter's really the only type of player that I think could make any sort of run at it. And even then, even with the 13-0 record and Lamar Jackson type numbers, it's going to be the longest of long shots. The last guy I would look at is another video game player in and of himself. I mean, he's, from what I saw last year on some plays, he was one of the closest that I've seen to Reggie Bush in a while, and he just happens to play for the team that Reggie Bush went to college for, and that's Zachariah Branch. Okay. Right? You got it. You got it.
Yeah.
300-1 is what he's at right now. And for a dude that plays wide receiver, they'll probably put him at running back a little bit. Yeah.
He was on my
They'll probably put him at running back a little bit. They'll probably, he kick return, punt return, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If USC, again, you got to win at least 9 or 10 games to be considered for the Heisman. And at that point, you're going to probably have to be a quarterback. You got to win at least 11 or 12 games if you're going to be a non-quarterback trying to win this thing. So if USC somehow gets hot, which we don't think they will, But if they've got the schedule to make some upsets, if they do that, Zachariah Branch is probably going to be a big part of that. Probably going to be catching passes from Miller Moss. So he's going to have to hope that USC's defense is somehow strong and Miller Moss, has thrown a couple picks and all that stuff, because you're going to have to beat out your teammate who's throwing you the ball. So that's the problem there. But those three guys, Luther Burden, Caden Salter, Zachariah Branch, 150 to 1, 200 to 1, and 300 to 1. I think they're just kind of worth, if you want to throw a couple bucks at them. It just have a fun bet to kind of focus on those guys throughout the year. That's pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, as far as the favorites that you mentioned, Dylan Gabriel, Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Nico Yamaliava, those are the ones that are listed in order, and Will Howard from Ohio State. Out of that list, if I was going to put my own hard-earned money on anybody on that list, I think that Dylan Gabriel plus 700, and then Jackson Dart being all the way down at plus 1,500. I don't think Dart should be all the way down at plus 1,500. With the weapons that they're going to have around him at Ole Miss this year, with all that he's going to do too. He runs the ball too in the QB power game for them in that read option game at Ole Miss. But again, the weapons that he's going to have around him at the receiver position and tight end is just ridiculous. So I think Dart at plus 1,500 out of the group of favorites would be someone that I would take a hard-earned look at. As far as some of the long shots, if I get down the list, the first one that I actually like, not even as a long shot, I like to take a shot at him in general, is Avery Johnson at plus 2,500 at K-State. Him and Nico Yamaliava and Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma. Those three young QBs are going to be so exciting to watch this year. They're going to put up ridiculous, video game type numbers this year. And Avery Johnson's going to run the football a lot. He's going to have a lot of rushing touchdowns, a lot of passing touchdowns. If he can stay healthy, I've already given out Kansas State over 9 as one of my win totals for the Big 12. If they're competing for a playoff spot and a 10-plus game winner, like you just said, if all of that happens, obviously that means Avery Johnson's had a hell of a year. So he would be worth a look at plus 2,500 in that spot. Another one that I kind of was looking at, if you kind of go down the list a little bit, was as talented as he is, he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. I'm going to stay in that same state and take a look at Jalen Daniels at Kansas. If he can just stay healthy, and if the Jayhawks have a big year, he, as good as he is, as a dual threat type quarterback with the numbers he's probably going to put up for the Jayhawks this year, he might be someone to take a look at. Again, these are long shots, people that we're talking about. These aren't people I'm saying are going to win the Heisman. These are people that if you could spend just a little bit of money, sprinkle a little bit of money on a long shot, these are ones that might be worth taking a look at. And then one more, same conference. Cam Rising, bro. Come on now. We done talked about it. The Utes are going to win the Big 12 this year and be in the playoffs. We both agree with that, right? So if that's the case, yes, and if the perimeter weapons at Utah are what we're hearing out of fall camp, and if they really are going to open it up a little bit and sling the rock around a little bit in that Andy Ludwig offense, and Rising, again, he's another one. He runs the football some as well, too. If Utah's sitting there at the end of the year, 12-1 or whatever it is, at the end, only 2 losses, 11-plus wins in the playoffs, Rising might be one to take a look at there as a long shot. And that's all I've got. I was going to mention KJ Jefferson, UCF. I guess I'm just a Big 12 lover here tonight, as far as the Heisman's concerned. But KJ Jefferson at plus 5,000. We all know that he's going to put up stupid numbers in that UCF offense this year and Gus Malzahn's offense. So if UCF is one of those dark horses competing there for a Big 12 championship, they might be one to take a look at. KJ Jefferson might be one to take a look at plus 5,000.
I noticed neither one of us mentions Shadur Sanders or Travis Hunter.
No, but look, I know you. Before we jump on them about this, I'm just going to be very honest. If Colorado does surprise people, and if they do win games, you can be rest assured the Heisman train will be going so fast down those tracks for Shadur and Travis Hunter. If that's the case, if they are winning games and competing in the Big 12, can you imagine the media hype and everything else to try to get them to one of them, whoever it is that's having the biggest year, to New York? It'd be wild.
Yeah, that would be wild. All right, let's move on from Heisman. We've got some other awards here. Not any of the Doak Walker, nothing like that. We're talking like comeback player of the year, most improved players, breakout players.
Just
Really kind of
anybody we
whatever
want
we
to name
want.
an award to. This is our awards. This is our show. We can give everybody.
Yeah,
We can give whoever we want to give an award to.
yeah. So where do you want to start at?
I'm gonna start with comeback player of the year. So I
Okay.
just mentioned him, Cam Rising.
Yep.
Got to be Cam Rising.
That's who I had too.
Yeah, I mean that's to me that's an easy answer. That's kind of low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
If he has a big year coming off the injury that he had last year, I think he could be a comeback player of the year. Now, I will give one more that I've been very high on this offseason, and that is Connor Wigman at Texas A&M. Coming off the injury he came off with early last year, he had over 900 yards passing, like around 10 touchdowns in 3.5 games last year. If he has a big year for that Colin Klein offense for the Aggies in Texas A&M, he's another one that I would, if there is, I think they actually do give that award out. If they don't, we'll give him the award. We'll call him up. But the comeback player of the year for me right now would be between Connor Wigman and Cam Rising.
Would someone like Kyle McCord be considered for comeback player of the year?
That's funny, man. No, but he could be if Syracuse. Hey, if you're Syracuse Orange, because you're all over them this year, bro.
Sir. Yes, sir.
If the Qs have a big year this year, and Fran Brown up there at the Qs, and they have a big year in the ACC, he might be someone you could talk about as far as the FU player of the year to Buckeye fans or whoever else.
Yeah. Breakout player of the year. You actually stole mine for comeback. I was actually thinking of Connor Wigman too for breakout player of the year.
Okay.
If he stays healthy, we're talking about him all offseason as possibly having first round talent in the NFL.
Yep.
And with Mike Elko's offense and Colin Klein coming over, I think Wigman has a real chance to break out at A&M finally, without Jimbo there.
Yeah, mine's going to be low-hanging fruit again. Nico Iamaleava in that Josh Heupel Tennessee offense is going to be so good. If that guy stays healthy, the numbers he's going to put up in that offensive system is going to be incredible. So he is my, like, no doubt, my, as far as like breakout player. That's who I've got. I mean, I like Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma as well. I mean, I like Avery Johnson at Kansas State. But I'm going to go Nico Iamaleava for that spot for breakout player of the year. I'm going to go up and piggyback off that, like freshman, like top freshman in college football this year.
Yeah. I was going to get to that. So, like, speaking of breakout, sorry to steal thunder. Speaking of breakout, I got another question for you.
All right.
We've got, to my knowledge, 3 freshman wide receivers, just absolute phenoms that we're hearing out of fall camp. We got Ryan Williams at Alabama. We got Cam Coleman at Auburn. Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Out of those 3, who do you think will have the most productive season this year?
For the type of offense that Ohio State runs, I'm probably going to say Jeremiah Smith, but it's close, man. Cam Coleman at Auburn is really close because I think he might be wide receiver 1 for Auburn.
He's probably going to get more targets than Jeremiah Smith because he doesn't have guys like Emeka Egbuka there.
Yeah, but I think Auburn's going to run the rock a lot too, though. With those 3 backs and Jarquez Hunter. And again, they do have some other receivers there at Auburn this year. They did not miss, apparently, according to them, on the recruits that they brought in and the transfers that they brought in. But it's close, man, between those 2. I think Ryan Williams is going to be incredible at Bama, but like I don't know that he's going to like put up the amount of targets and et cetera that he's going to get this year. I mean, the dude's still supposed to be playing at Saraland High School right now, and he again went a year early into college, so I still think he's going to be productive for Bama this year. But I don't know that he's going to put up the numbers that those other 2 cats will for the Buckeyes and Auburn.
Well, I stole your thunder there. You were mentioning breakout, piggybacking off of that.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say, as far as like freshmen, breakout like freshmen this year overall, I was going to go with those two of those, the ones we just mentioned, Jeremiah Smith and Cam Coleman. It's hard for me to pick between the 2, but those are the 2 freshmen that I think that are going to make some serious noise this year overall in college football.
I'm interested to hear who might be your most improved player, because I think I got a good one for you.
So I've got two. One of them hurts my heart a little bit, but I've got two. I've got Cade Klubnik in year 2 in the Garrett Riley system. I think that Klubnik is going to be a lot better for Clemson this year and will be one of the most improved players in the country. And the other one, because he was so bad last year, and I do think that this year, the fact that it's Peyton Thorne at Auburn. So Peyton Thorne last year comes in after spring ball, comes in during the summer to a coaching change, new system, bad roster around him, and he didn't really have any weapons, etc. They changed offensive play callers during the middle of the season. Wasn't a whole lot that went his way that could really help him. Now he's had an entire offseason. He's got Hugh Freeze calling plays. He's got much better receivers around him. He's got a good running game that's going to be able to help him. So I would imagine, again, because as bad as he was last year, I think he's going to be much more improved this year. I think Peyton Thorne and Cade Klubnik are your two most improved.
See, man, you're so narrow-minded. You're so QB focused. You got to think off the board when you're talking about most improved player. Okay, my most improved player is a young man on the offensive side of the ball in the trenches by the name of Seth McLaughlin.
The center that all Alabama fans are always going to have nightmares over, that freaking couldn't snap the football. He's starting at center, and he can't snap the football. You mean to tell me that out of all those 5 stars and 4 stars that Nick Saban and Alabama had, that somebody couldn't take the football and just snap it and hit Jalen Milroe somewhere near the chest or the stomach with it? Shit.
Yeah. I mean, it was clearly something going on with the coaching there, because he's just going to go up to Columbus and every single snap out of 600 or 700 this year is going to be perfect.
Well,
it's just going to be perfect right in Will Howard's breadbasket.
Dude, you did that just to get a rise out of me. Don't act like you did. You did that just...
I mean, literally, that's like one of the first ones that came to my mind, because I was thinking, there's no way he's going to be that bad again, right?
That was pretty good, man. That was pretty good. Hey, but I will say, at one of the first scrimmages that Ohio State had, some of the word coming out of there was how old Seth McLaughlin has some snapping issues, and I said, you don't say. But yeah, if he would be if he could just snap the football.
Yeah, it's wild. It was wild what happened to him. He had a little case of the yips.
Yeah.
So we'll see if
I want to throw out a most improved defensive player.
Okay.
And that is because he still was good last year, but not to his standard. Because his freshman year, he was as dominant as we've seen a freshman defensive player in the SEC be in a long time, and that's Harold Perkins at LSU. Yeah. And that new Blake Baker defensive system and moving him back to that middle linebacker spot, where off-ball linebacker, where he's just going to run around and eat on that defense. I think that Harold Perkins is going to be much improved from what he was last year to this year. So I think he's going to be one of the best defensive players in the country. If he's not, LSU's defense is in trouble. But I think having him in the middle of that defense, I think he's going to be really good in that middle of that defense for LSU this year.
Yeah. We'll get to Coach of the Year here in a second. I want to kind of switch gears for a second and talk to you about preseason favorites and how kind of handle, expectations are handled by those preseason favorites. Obviously, Georgia's the preseason favorite heading in. I think they're plus 250, plus 300 to win it all. Since 2002, only 2 preseason favorites have won it all. Okay.
Isn't that 22
that's
years?
2004, that's 2004 USC, and that's 2017 Alabama. Now, 7 more have lost in the title game. So, 9 of the 22 made the championship, which is pretty solid. Do you think that this, obviously this has no bearing on the Georgia, football team, but expectations and all that, do you think it has any, does it spell doom at all for the Bulldogs, especially having to play 16, 17 games this year, and kind of the wear and tear on your bodies, and then obviously, having the preseason expectations there. What do you think that does for Georgia, if anything?
I mean, like you said, I don't think they're thinking about it at all, but You never know. I mean, Kirby Smart is kind of like, the mastermind of psychology of making them somehow feel disrespected or whatever, even though they're the odds-on favorite to win it all. But now, I mean, I'm sure that people out there that love trends and love to follow trends, that's obviously only 2 out of the last 22 years have won it. So that's a pretty substantial trend there. But I think there is something probably to it, man, to be honest with you. It's got to be. But I do think that the mindset that seems to be of this Georgia team, they're hungry, man. Like not making the playoffs, getting knocked out of the SEC championship game, Alabama last year. If they can stay relatively healthy, especially the quarterback position with Beck, it's just hard for me not seeing them being right there in the thick of it at the end.
Yeah. I mean, even most of these preseason favorites, they either made the championship game or they made the Sugar Bowl or Rose Bowl or, a high type of bowl that's going to be a playoff this year. So you can pretty much pencil in Georgia for the playoff probably. A couple of these are staggering. I mean, 2012 USC was a favorite. They were finished the season unranked and they lost in the Sun Bowl. I completely forgot. The 2006 Notre Dame apparently was the preseason favorite to win it all. Imagine that. And they ended up losing in the Sugar Bowl to, I believe, LSU. So
wonder if that USC team was the Lane Kiffin, Matt Barkley bunch. It might have been. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm just thinking. I'm wondering if that was the team that did that.
Yep, and it might have been. But USC in the last 22 years is only second to Alabama and leading in preseason favorites. So that's interesting. But let's get to one more award here. We'll talk, Sean, a Coach of the Year. Usually this goes to one of the teams that's in the 4-team playoff. I think last year didn't your boy Kalen DeBoer get it? Is that right? Yeah. So he was Coach of the Year last year. So you got to be the captain of a good team here. So you got to thinking one of our playoff teams that we mentioned in our last episode. And I go off the ball because you're thinking of a team like Washington last year, because it's going to be hard for Kirby Smart to win this unless they just absolutely look dominant and they're 13-0, right?
Yep.
Same with Ryan Day because of the rosters they have and because they're starting so far ahead of the game. So I think you look at guys who win their other conferences like the ACC or the Big 12. Will our boy Kyle Whittingham finally get the recognition that he long deserves?
He should, but again, they're the odds-on favorite to win the Big 12. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they
the only other guy I got, because you got Dabo in the ACC, I've got I can't imagine Mario Cristobal winning the Coach of the Year, right?
Well, I mean, if Miami goes out and wins 11-plus games, he absolutely will be in the mix for it. So if they win the ACC and do what you think they might do, he absolutely would be in the mix for it. If what you think is going to happen with LSU, I know you don't want to hear this, but Brian Kelly would absolutely be one that could be mentioned.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see a conference championship game loser getting that title because you haven't really seen it in the past. But again, it's a new era, and it's they're still making the playoff as a possible 6 seed or so, and you're still finishing 11-2. That's still a solid season. Losing to Georgia is no shame in that, but
that's a good point. That's a good point. It'd have to be a conference win. So if what I think is going to happen, if Clemson does end up riding the ship here this year and winning the ACC championship, and we're all back on that Roy bus with Dabo, he might be one that could win it, dude. If he did, could you imagine how obnoxious that guy will be? But hey, take a victory lap, dude. The amount of hate and just. We talked about it. It has left the train. It has left the station, dude, how outrageous that has gotten. I get it. They are not as dominant as they've been in the during the Trevor Lawrence and some of those years there with Deshaun Watson. But they won the freaking ACC championship game 2 years ago, guys. They're still a good football team. So if they do end up winning it this year, I could definitely see him being one that would be right there to possibly do it.
Yep. That's all we got, right?
Yeah, I didn't have anything else.
Okay, week 0 is upon us. I put out a bet, Florida State -10. I will put it out on social media later on in the week. If Lance has any bets, he'll put them out on social media as well. Again, please follow us on all social media. We're putting out some good stuff there. So again, go back and listen to our preview episodes. We've only got a couple more days. Week 0, is just a little, taste of football. So we still have all next week. to kind of look forward to, the true start of college football in week 1. So again, we thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.